I just want to go over a little bit to some of machshava that I was giving to Bishvat Seder, other things, but just share it with you a little bit. And that is, the earliest Sefer Kabbalah we have is the Sefer Yetzirah. And the Sefer Yetzirah, some are miyachas to Avraham Avinu, and some are miyachas to Adam HaRishon, going all the way back. And what does Sefer Yetzirah do? Sefer Yetzirah does, it shows you how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the universe by combining the different kochos of the letters of the Aleph base. It's like a chemical reaction, right? You take two atoms of hydrogen and you combine them with one atom of oxygen and you get water. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes the kayach of the Aleph and the base, different arrangements, and through that a world is created. That's the kayach. In fact, that's how they're masbir the idea of Adam HaRishon. Right? Adam HaRishon called all the animals by a name. Right? He gave everything a name. So I remember reading years and years ago a parody, a satire by Mark Twain. Mark Twain, b'seif yamav at least, became an atheist because whatever, he had suffered a lot and he stopped believing in God. So in one of his pieces, I think it's an unpublished piece that they published later, he was making late sonus of the Torah. He has this scene where Eve asks Adam, he says, why did you call that thing a lion? Why did you call it a lion? And he says, he's irritated with his wife, and he says, well, what do you want? It looks exactly like a lion, so I called it a lion. Like, what do you... So, he was making fun, but the emes is, if instead of lion, we substitute the Lashon HaKodesh Aryeh, Kabbalistically, this is exactly what he's answering, meaning like this. How did Adam HaRishon know to call an Aryeh an Aryeh? The answer is, he had a kind of an X-ray vision that could see reverse engineering. He could see the spiritual mahus, the spiritual composition of a lion. And he saw it was a combination of the kayach of the Aleph and the kayach of the Reish and the kayach of the Yud and the kayach of the Hey that were put b'dafka in that particular order. So that's exactly right. A lion is a lion because it's Aleph, Reish, Yud, Hey. A sus is a sus, a horse, because of Samach, Vav, Samach. And this is what the Ramban says. This is why the Hebrew language is called Lashon HaKodesh. Why is Hebrew called the holy language? So the Rambam writes, Maimonides writes, the Rambam writes, because in Hebrew, or at least Lashon HaKodesh, there is no pornography. There is nothing that's impure or openly sexual. So for example, you can see this. We don't have a word, actually, for sexual intercourse. Bia, shechiva, bia means to come to somebody. Shechiva is to lie with somebody, meaning all of the functions. And also there's no word for elimination, for getting rid of waste from the body. Everything is euphemistic. So the Rambam says that's a Lashon Kodesh because the expurgatory and the sexual functions are all by euphemisms. They're not said beferish. The Ramban doesn't like that because the Ramban says that's just an... And by the way, there's no swear words in Hebrew. All obscenities in modern Hebrew are essentially Arabic. So if somebody is swearing in Hebrew, they're using Arabic. In Lashon HaKodesh, there is no swear words, so to speak. You can swear, but that's a swear. That's a shvua b'shem Hashem. That's a separate thing. But the notion of using profanity does not exist in Lashon HaKodesh. Ramban doesn't like that. That's a negative. You're telling me it's kadosh because it doesn't have bad stuff. He says differently. He says Lashon HaKodesh is kodesh because it is through the eis of the Aleph base that Hashem created Shemayim Ba'aretz. So it's kadosh because this was the tool of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in creation. The Ran says, actually, in the beginning of Maseches Nedarim, which is, again, in Nedarim, it's interesting. Ohr Somayach's yeshiva cycle is a little different than most yeshivas in the sense that, for various reasons, Rav Weinbach had cheshbonos, certain Masechtos, which are generally in the yeshiva cycle, are not in the Ohr Somayach cycle. Kesuvos, Yevamos are not in your cycle, even though the Kailel sometimes does it. And Nedarim is not in your cycle. right? So those are three Masechtas that are not in the Ohr Somayach cycle. So you have a distinction in that way. Nedarim, though, is very interesting because Nedarim, although there is something called Perish Rashi on Nedarim, there is a Rashi on Nedarim, but the Rashi on Nedarim is not the Iker Perish people learn. In fact, many people don't even learn the Rashi on Nedarim. They learn the Ran on the outer margin, and the Ran is very long, and the Ran is kind of a combination of Rashi and Tosas because the Ran is Masber Pshat and also goes into Kashas and Terutzim, and very, very different than Rashi. The Ran is very, very Marich, but also very good Bal Masber. So it's interesting that when you move from a regular Masechta to Nedarim, it's a big change, it's a very big change. But after learning Nedarim for Zman, it's hard to go back to Rashi. You know, you're used to the Ran's Hasbara. Rashi is much more Makatzer. I mean, everything is in Rashi. Rashi is Makatzer. But in the beginning of Maseches Nedarim, the Ran says, which L'chara fits with the Ramban exactly, that the Lashon HaKodesh is intrinsic. That if this is called the Shulchan, that's because Shulchan is intrinsically what it is, i.e. because Shin, Vav, Lamed, Chaf, Nun. It says all other Lashonos are only matters of Haskama. The fact that something is called lion, who knows why? People just agreed in a given culture to call it lion. It's not its intrinsic mahus, it's not its essence. Lashon HaKodesh describes the essence of something, the reality of something, as opposed to other languages which are just conventional agreements within a society to call something as something. You know, we don't know. We don't even know why. I mean, the history might be mesubach. Anyway, like, you know, lion, you know, where does that come from exactly? I don't know. Okay. So Sefer Yetzirah actually describes how Hashem created everything by combining the spiritual kaichais of the Aleph base. And what's interesting is that we actually have, you know, not only do we have Sefer Yetzirah, but we have it in English. Aryeh Kaplan translated it, and you can even get it online, right? So you can open Sefer Yetzirah. The Gra wrote a Perush. I mean, there are many. Saadia Gaon wrote many Perushim on Sefer Yetzirah. The Vilna Gaon wrote a Perush on Sefer Yetzirah, very, very long Perush on Sefer Yetzirah. Now, what's interesting is the Gemara says in Masechet Shabbos that even human beings can access this koach of Sefer Yetzirah. The Gemara says there were Amoraim who would create a cow or a calf, Erev Shabbos, through Sefer Yetzirah, and they would shech that calf. The idea of the Gailam, which is a big issue, the issue of this artificial man, a Gailam, is a person or a humanoid that is created through Sefer Yetzirah. Now, the story, I mean, I don't want to digress too many things, but the, you know, the most famous Gailam in history is said to be the Gailam of the Maharal of Prague. Maharal of Prague, it is said, created a Gailam, and this Gailam was kind of like a Superman fighting the bad guys, you know, when there were anti-Semitic accusations. The Gailam was the big defender of the Jews. And the Gailam can be decommissioned. The Gailam could not talk. The Kayach of Dibur depends on V'yipach B'yapav Nishvas Chayim, on Hashem breathing into a divine soul. A Gailam does not have a divine soul. If you kill a Gailam or decommission a Gailam, you're not over on Ritzicha. But a Gailam does function like a human being without the power of speech. And that there is such a phenomenon is Vaday Emes. But whether the Maharal himself created a Gailam is a big, big machlokas, because the problem is that the Maharal died in the 1500s. And the very first source that mentions the Maharal had a Gailam was not discovered until the 1800s. Meaning that for 300 years there was no other Makor that talked about it. And the person who brought this Makor to the light had a reputation of forging a lot of things. We know that he forged a lot of things. So Kishem that he forged some things. There's a big reyesa. He might have forged these other things as well. Legend has it, I don't know if anyone has ever been to Prague. I've never been to Prague myself. But Prague has the Maharal Shul. An old base Knesset in Prague is called the Alter No Shul. It's the base Knesset of the Maharal. and there's a locked attic that nobody's allowed to go to. And there had been a Messiah that in that locked attic is the inactive Gailam of the Maral that is there, kind of sleeping, and you go in, you awake him, things could happen. So the story goes that the Nazis in World War II broke into the attic looking for a treasure, or Jews, whatever they were looking for, and the Gailam, kind of killed them or scared them, whatever it is. And since then, it's been locked, and nobody went up to no one goes up to the attic. Ad Hayom Hazeh, it's a well-known Messiah, even among the Goyim in Prague. The Goyim don't go there either, and the like. The Frierdiker Rebbe, not the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, but his father-in-law, Yosef Yitzchak the Riatz, actually says that he went into the attic once and he saw the sleeping Goyim, whatever it is, so he was made. On the other hand, there are a lot of people, including some of the Chachamim, who say that it's lo haya v'lo nivra. Who knows? Such a thing didn't happen, and the Rebbe saw something else, or whatever it would be. So the issue of the Maral and the Gailam is actually a controversial issue. It's not a Pashut thing. The way I look at it is, I don't know if the Maral created a Gailam, but I believe the Maral could have created a Gailam if he wanted to. So you don't have to believe the story, but you have, there's a Munas Chachamim that a Chacham, a Tzaddik has a Koyach to create such a thing. In fact, it's recorded about the Vilna Gaon himself in the Meisim books, that when he was 13, he was on the verge of creating a Gailam, because he had learned all these Yanim of Kabbalah, and his father ordered him not to get into that stuff. So he didn't do it because Gezerah of Kibbut Av was not to be Isaac in the creation of a Gailam. I think the father said, once you get into that stuff, you'll stop learning, you'll be involved in these types of magical things. It's better to, just stick with Talmud Torah. But the Ro was on the verge of doing such a thing as a kid, a 13-year-old, and the like. So Sefer Yetzirah is there. It's an amazing thing. Now again, we don't even understand the concept. I mean, for example, I said a sentence, when you combine the Koyach of Aleph and the Koyach of Reish. Okay, what do we mean by combine? How do you combine, right? I mean, how would you make water, right? Combine hydrogen. The word combine, Sirif needs a hezber. What are you mitzaref exactly? Okay. But nevertheless, you can actually get the text of Sefer Yetzirah. Okay. Now, Sefer Yetzirah has other things as well, though. And one of the things that Sefer Yetzirah does is, for every month of the year, it identifies an ice of the Aleph base that represents a spiritual aspect of that month. Now, obviously, not all the letters are used. You only have 12 months, and there are 22 letters. But every Chodesh has an ice, and the ice is mitzuraf. It is combined, once again, with a human function. There might be the letter might be connected to Re'iyah, might be connected to Shemiah, might be connected to Achila. In other words, there's a getter of an ice connected to a bodily function. So, in fact, Rav Tzadok of Lublin, for every Chodesh, in other words, when in the Parshias of the week, when it's up to a Shabbos Mevorchin, or whatever it is, Rav Tzadok always takes that shtickle from Sefer Yetzirah, and he's masber it. In fact, people have made separate svarim from Rav Tzadok. Rav Tzadok al Rosh Chodesh, which is not, he didn't write a sefer on Rosh Chodesh, but they were malakeh from Pri Tzadok on Chumash, his marachos on Sefer Yetzirah, going through Rosh Chodesh and the like. So, for the month of Shvat, this is what Sefer Yetzirah says. And by this example, you'll at least understand how it normally writes it. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the month of Shvat, Himlich Eis Tzadik Bila'ita. He took the letter Tzadik, which doesn't even appear in the word Shvat, right? So it doesn't have to be a letter in the name. He took the letter Tzadik, and he was mamlechet. He made it a king. He made it a shaylet over what is called la'ita. Now, what is the word la'ita? La'ita is ravenous, gluttonous eating. Remember when Esav comes back from the hunting, And Esav wants to eat the Nizid Adoshim, the pot of lentils. So his lashon was to Yaakov, Haliteni na min ha'adam hazeh. Haliteni literally means pour it down my gullet. Just take a tureen of soup, just pour it down. So le'ita, that's haliteni. Le'ita is, in Yiddish we say fresser, right? There's essen and fressen, right? Essen is eating, and fressen is like a chazer. So le'ita is an achila gasa, like a behema. So what is the pshat? He was mamlich ois tzaddik al le'ita. So Rav Tzaddik is masber like this. Rav Tzaddik is masber a unique segula, not only for Tu Bishvat, really for the month of Shvat. So it's still no Ge'el L'maisa. He says the very first chait of Adam HaRishon was through achila. HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded not to eat from the Eitz Hadas, and Adam and Chava were makalkel in inyanim of achila. Achila was the original chait of merida against Hashem. And achila, that's a merida against Hashem, is also a form of le'ita, even though it doesn't have to externally look like ravenous, animalistic eating. But if the etzem, the achila, is not to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's definitionally a maisa of le'ita. So the maisa, achila, is something that we share in common with animals. Achila is a very animalistic thing. Right? That's why we sometimes read about midas of tzaddikim. They were ashamed to be they were ashamed to eat. They said this is what an animal does. There were certain inyanim, they were ashamed. There was mamish and busha. So, what the month of Shvat is mesugel to do, Rav Tzadok says, is that the way we do tshuva over the chait of the Eitz Hadas is not by not eating. We don't say, oh, I was makalkel bi'achila, so I do tshuva by not eating. Fakert. The highest level of tshuva is you take the very activity that was an act of rebellion against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you direct it to Kedusha, to Hakaras HaTov, to Hashem, by making brachos properly, by eating with the kavanah that you want to be strong and healthy in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's a tikkun for the chait of the Eitz Hadas. So this is what Sefer Yetzirah means. Hashem took the letter tzaddik. Now the letter tzaddik also means a tzaddik. Hashem gave the capacity to a righteous person to be masakein, the la'ita, the gluttonous eating of the chait of the Eitz Hadas. That's a tremendous thing. So achila, the whole year, really it's the whole year, but befrat, Shvat, there's more mesugel for it. We could be masakein achila by directing ourselves to eat l'shem shamayim, so it no longer becomes a rebellion against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It becomes a tikkun for the chait of the Eitz Hadas. And again, it's very, very instructive. It's a very deep thought that the tshuva is not by repudiating the pu'ula, but by taking the etzem pu'ula of the chait and using it to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when the Mekubalim created a Tu Bishvat Seder, etc., I'll talk a little bit about that, one of the main themes they had in mind is through the achila of all the different peiros. They were mechaven to be mesakein the chait of Eitz Hadas by himlich ois tzaddik b'le'ita. Now, even though, again, the Sefer Yetzirah was not saying it about Tu B'Shvat, they were saying it about the month of Shvat. But the Mekubalim located the primary makam of that avodah was in the achilas peiros of Tu B'Shvat. So it's a very, very important inyan of kavanah that one tries to be mechavein, to be mesakin the pagam of the Eitz Hadas. Right, so that's one idea based on the idea of Sefer Yetzirah. Now, you know, the Rambam in the Shemona Prakim, Shemona Prakim is his hakdama to Pirkei Avos, right, Shemona Prakim. So the Rambam, of course, everybody knows, was a doctor as well, and the Rambam was a very famous doctor, meaning the Rambam was not just a doctor, he was one of the great physicians in the world at the time. He was employed by the caliph in the royal court in Fustat, which is Old Cairo. And the Rambam writes he spent the whole day at the royal court, had hundreds of people, harems and whatever, government officials. And the Rambam was the doctor for the whole group. It's like he had his own hospital, so to speak. And the Rambam writes, it's hard to believe the Rambam's true. The Rambam says he was there the whole day. He says he didn't eat anything. Nothing. I guess nothing was kosher, whatever it is. And he would come home at night after sunset, after being a whole day in the palace and working the whole day. And there would be lines of people, lines of Yidden, waiting to see him. Some of them had halachic shaylas, some of them had questions in learning, and some of them were patients, Yidden, who wanted to see him for a doctor. And he begged their forgiveness. He says he needed 15 minutes to eat something. So he ate something 15 minutes, and then he was metapel with his line for the next 2 or 3 hours. And only after that, he said, was he able to sit down and learn and write the Mishnah Torah. So he wrote the Mishnah Torah, in the hours of the night after working the whole day as a doctor. And he says he was so tired that when he was answering questions, he was lying down, and he had to lie down in a bed. And people would ask him these shilas. Just a pella what the Rambam was able to do with all of this, right? So, all right. But the Rambam writes in the Shemona Prakim, the Rambam writes how health is very important. And the Rambam even gives us, in the Mishnah Torah, he gives us medical advice. He talks about the diet, exercise. He says what you should eat, what you should not eat. Some say that, some use this advice even today. There's a diet book based on the Rambam's diet that they put out, and the like. But the Rambam makes a fascinating point in Shemona Prakim. The Rambam makes a point that people sometimes think, oh, one guy is a glutton and he's always doing this and that. That's disgusting. Another guy, keeps himself in shape. That's great. The Rambam says, fascinatingly, there's no particular difference between somebody who's addicted to food and somebody who's addicted to exercise. He says, why is one a bigger, more virtuous than the other? You're addicted to Yenerzach and you're addicted to Yenerzach. What makes you better? Even though we typically think, oh, it's much more virtuous to be, in shape. He says, health is very important, but health is not important in and of itself. Health is important because it enables you to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because if a person is sick, they're not able to learn the same way, they can't daven the same way, they won't have arichas yamim to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with mitzvahs. So he says, health is not an intrinsic good. I'm using modern terminology. Health is an instrumental good. Instrumental means it leads to something else. And the Rambam says, a person who looks at health as the etzem thing, the tachlis of his life, he says, is no better than a glutton. You can be a glutton for food, or you can be a glutton for exercise. There are people who exercise. Actually, I'm not sure if it's a technical medical condition, but there is such thing as exercise addiction. People who can't stop. They exercise like 12 hours a day, or whatever it is. What's the old joke? They say, if you jog every day, you add 5 hours, five years to your life. But the problem is, those are the 5 years that you're jogging. So you're not necessarily ahead in that way. So what's interesting about the Rambam is that on one hand, the Rambam is very, very makbid on taking care of our health. That's something we should all, giving Moshe to myself, we should all pay very much attention to. Very, very important inyan. But he underscores that it's not a tachlis b'fnei atzmo. It's kind of an enabler for the other things you need to do with your life. And that's why health is a chashuva, inyan. Actually, the Torah commands us to guard our health, but it's for the tachlis of avodas Hashem. And therefore, that's the same thing of achila. We're misaking the chet of the Eitz Hadas by the tzaddik being shayleit on the le'ita. So it's no longer le'ita, but it becomes an achila l'shem shemayim. Ad kedei kach that the Rambam actually says, if a person has that kavanah in life, he says he's never going to eat something that's unhealthy, even though it tastes good, because you're not. I mean, this is a very high madrega, to be sure, but he says, I'm not eating because it tastes good. I'm eating so I'll serve Hashem. So the question is going to be, is this going to help me serve Hashem? Now, if it's going to make me sick, no, it's not going to help me serve Hashem, right? So why would I eat it? This is, again, it's a very high madrega, but this is what the Rambam tells us. He says, you're not going to eat something because it's masuk. You will eat something because it's mo'il. Mo'il, meaning it helps you, not because it tastes good or whatever it would be. Okay. So that's one idea of the Tu Bishvat Hanhaga, to be masak in the chait of Adam Harishon. Now, there's a second idea. The Gemara in Bracha says that anyone who eats without a bracha, ki'ilu gaizel mi'akadosh baruch hu, it's as if you steal from Hashem. Now, this is a very familiar Gemara, because the Gemara has a stira, right? One pasuk says, L'Hashem haaretz umlaya, Hashem owns everything. And the other pasuk says in Tehillim, haaretz nasan livnei adam, Hashem gave the earth to people. So who owns these things? Do I own it? Does Hashem own it? So the Gemara's answer is, kan kaidem bracha, kan liachar bracha. Until you make a bracha, it belongs to Hashem. You're stealing from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Once you make a bracha, he gives you rishus. Once he gives you rishus, haaretz nasan livnei adam. Okay, so that's good. But there's another Gemara right afterwards that's a little less familiar. It says, if a person is eichel without a bracha, it's ke'ilu gaizel aviv v'imai. It's like he's stealing from his father and his mother. Aviv is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm stealing from my father, that's Hashem. Imai is I'm stealing from Knesset Yisrael. So the way it works is, Hashem is our father, the Jewish people as a whole are like our mother. So the question is, what does that mean? Bishlama, if I don't make a bracha, I'm stealing from Hashem because Hashem is the owner of everything. But in what way, if I eat without a bracha, am I stealing from you? This wasn't your property. Right? How am I geizel from you? So the Arizal is masbir that in every physical entity, there are sparks of kedusha in that thing, because that is what gives it existence. That is what gives it life. And when you eat l'shem shemayim, you release sparks of kedusha, both in terms of your body within you, and in the world as a whole. You release certain divine shefa into the world when you make brachas with kavanah. When you don't make a bracha, those sparks of kedusha are not released. So you're a gazlan vis-a-vis the rest of Klal Yisrael, because you're maineya from them the brachos that would come down had you made a bracha. So anyone that's eichel b'loi bracha, you're maineya a bracha, you're geizel from Hashem, because Hashem owns the apple, and you're geizel from Klal Yisrael, because they would have gotten the bracha from your bracha, and you're maineya from them the bracha. So again, the Kabbalim say that befrat on Tu Bishvat, you're mechaven with your brachos to be mayrid a shefa on Am Yisrael. Now, yeah.
Am I releasing anything better if I take 2 bites out of that apple instead of 1 bite?
It seems not. It seems that just the pula of achila, brings the shefa. I don't think you get necessarily more shefa by eating more. You eat what you need. Yeah. So there's a third idea. Again, these are related ideas. There's a third idea that modern society, the Jew is normally, a Yidden are normally associated as urbanized creatures. Most certainly in Chutz La'aretz, that's the case. Very few Jews in Chutz La'aretz are farmers. In Eretz Yisrael, you have a bit more. But still, most of us don't know from fields, and most of us don't know from orchards. And we don't know the rhythms. If you look at Chazal, you see how attuned they were to sunrise, sunset, Kechavim, to Kufas. There was a natural sensitivity to the way the cycles of the world operated. or the cycles of the universe operated. I remember, there's an Indian halacha, right, that the best way of davening shacharis is kavasikin. So what is tefillah kavasikin? That you want to time Shmona Esrei, that you begin Shmona Esrei exactly when the sun rises. And this is the kiyum of the pasuk in Tehillim, Yira'ucha, we will fear you, Hashem, im HaShemesh, together with the Shemesh, right? That's davening kavasikin. So you start davening 20 minutes, a half an hour before, so you hit Shmona Esrei kavasikin. So I remember, again, as Chatoya and Imasker, I usually do not daven kavasikin. I get up later. But there was one time I had yortzeit for my father, and I had appointments later in the day. So I bedafka got up to daven vasikin, so I davened for the Amud somewhere. So I went to a show, daven kavasikin, and this was in a basement without windows, so you couldn't see the sun before. It was a basement without windows. But they had a clock, and the clock was what they call an atomic clock that measures time to hundredths of a second. Hundredths of a second. And they had an exact time for nates to 100th of a second. It was 6:02, 0.02. So I was davening for the Amud, and they told me afterwards that I could never daven for the Amud there again, because I think I was late by 0.04 seconds. And they said, we're very makbid on Vasikin. He says, you were machshul the tzibur, you didn't do it to Vasikin. Okay, whatever, it is difficult. So, okay, I'm not going to quibble with their taina. Their taina is their taina. But the emes is, obviously, Chazal didn't have atomic clocks. That's not how they measured things. And in many, many ways, the whole ruchnius of Vasikin, I think we sometimes lose with the technicalities of it, because the idea of Vasikin is when the sun, think about this in a spiritual way. We have to be a little artistic in our thinking. The sun comes up, it's a new day, and it's Ke'ilu, as David HaMelech says, Hashamayim Mesaprim Kvayt Kel, the heavens are declaring the glory of God. It is as if the Shemesh is now coming, leading the procession of the new world to give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I want to be machaber myself to the new world, new day, praising Hashem. And I want to join with the sun, so to speak, in singing the song of praise. I become one with the universe. So you're looking at a clock, that's not what it is. It's supposed to be inspired by being connected to it. But we lose that. Shabbos. Your Shabbos over for 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 90 minutes, 72 minutes, 90 minutes like brisk. Shabbos is over when there's Gimel Kechavim. Again, Kechavim Ketanim, Meikar Din Beinonim, we're Machmer Ketanim. But Shabbos is over when there are 3 stars in the sky. That's emes. In fact, it's interesting. This was a little bit of a vucha. All of the cheshbainis when Shabbos is over are based on when you would assume there are Gimel Kechavim. The real etzem definition of Laila is Gimel Kechavim. Now, this is an interesting machlokes between the Cheskel of Ramsky and the Brisker Rav. Both, the Brisker Rav, of course, was the son of Rav Chaim Brisker. Rav Cheskel of Ramsky was a chaver and a chaver of the Brisker Rav, and a very close talmid of Rav Chaim Brisker. Now, in Brisk, they have a minhag, they end Shabbos very late. They learn Rabbeinu Tam is 90 minutes after Shkia. So they don't end Shabbos till 90 minutes after Shkia. Now, in Eretz Yisrael, even Rabbeinu Tam 72 minutes is very much of a pella, because there's Eretz Yisrael, when you're closer to the equator, the stars come out. The twilight period, which is Bein Hashmashas, is much shorter. It doesn't depend on winter and summer. It's not a winter and summer thing. It's an equator thing, meaning the closer you are to the equator, the quicker Tzeisak Chavim is. That's why Tzeisak Chavim in Eretz Yisrael is astronomically going to be quicker after Shkia than it'll be in New York or Paris or London. That's why there's a whole question if Rabbeinu Tam Shita even makes sense in Eretz Yisrael. It made sense in France. Lav Dafka makes sense in Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Cheskel, but the Brisker Rebbe waited 90 minutes. Now 90 minutes is so Rabbi Cheskel Abramsky said, I want to take you. He takes the Brisker Rebbe by the arm. He leads him outside, said, look at the sky, look at the sky. Gimel Kaychavim. There's not Gimel Kaychavim, there's 100 Kaychavim. Look at the sky. What are you waiting 90 minutes? Says, it's not Shabbos anymore. And the Brisker Rebbe closed his eyes. The Brisker Rebbe says, I'm not going to look, I'm not going to look. The halacha says it's still Laila. He says, I don't care. I'm sorry, still Yaim. I don't care what you're going to show me. I don't care. So the Brisker Rebbe Spadavka said, I'm not going to look at the Metzias. The Metzias is not relevant. Rabbi Cheskel Avramsky said, hey, you got to look at the Metzias. All of these Zamanim, whatever the Zaman is based on an assumption when you would have the Kaychavim. But the Etzem thing, the Etzem Davar that's Kavei Alayla, is Re'iyas Kaychavim. You see, it's an interesting thing. Now, the truth of the matter is, though, it's hard to even see Kaychavim Bisman Haseh. You go out in the sky, how many Kaychavim do you see, right? I always remember having this question as a kid. I mean, it's a stupid question, but Hashem promises Avraham that your children will be like the Kaychlei HaShemayim. They'll be like the stars. So I look up at the sky and I say, I see five Kaychavim here. What's so great about Kaychlei HaShemayim? But if you ever were in a place without artificial lighting, go to Amuka, Yonasan ben Uziel, in Amuka, near Tzvat. You look up at hey, there are like 1 million stars up there. You ever see Mamish? The sky is filled with Kaychavim. But we don't even see it. We don't even see it. So we're totally manutak from nature. That's what I'm saying. The Shalosh Regalim themselves. We emphasize that Shalosh Regalim are connected certain historical events, right? Pesach is connected Yetzias Mitzrayim. Shavuos is connected Matan Torah. Sukkot is connected the Anani HaKavod. But Alibit the Emes, in the Torah itself, there's a very strong agricultural emphasis on it. Pesach is called Chag HaAviv, the season of the ripening of the barley. And Shavuos is Chag HaKotzer, that's the season of the harvesting of the wheat, which is after the barley. And Sukkot is called Chag HaAsif, the ingathering of the produce that dried off in the summer, right? The concept of being aware of these cycles. But we're not aware of it at all. We don't feel the agricultural cycles. So there is an Inyan Taka in Avodas Hashem that one should see the godless Habayre through the teva of the world, the cycles of the world, the way things work. Yaim, Laila. Look at the Nusach of Ma'ariv. Ma'ariv talks about the transitions of Yaim to Laila. The Shalosh Regalim talk about the stages in the growth of Peres and Tavua. Right, so the problem is we become menutek from these inyanim, when in fact they're supposed to be a big source of Hisairis. Big source of Hisairis. And we close ourselves off to it. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, if you're learning Torah, hamafsik mishnasa, you stop your learning, and you look at a tree and you say, Kama noa ilanzeh, how beautiful is this tree? Harezeh mischayev benafshay, you deserve to die, you're chayev misa. How dare you stop your learning to look at how pretty nature is? So the Pashtus, you'll tell me, so Chazal are denigrating nature. Don't look at nature. How dare you stop learning to say, oh, what a beautiful tree. But listen to the Kotzker Rebbe. The Kotzker Rebbe, Kedarkei, has an ingenious reinterpretation. He says, you know why he's Chayav Misa? Because when he looked at the tree, he considered it to be an interruption of his learning. Hamafsik Mishnasai. But if he understood that his hispaininess in the Teva would be a way that he feels the Hakaras Atayv to the Ribbana Shalom, that would be a good thing. You see, it's that the Chiyav Misa is that he regarded the Teva as a hefsek. And the Rambam writes, the Rambam writes that this is how you come, one of the ways you come to Abbas Hashem is by contemplating the niflais of the Teva. And David HaMelech says it over and over again. Shemayim, Misaprim, the heavens, the Keichavim, the Areach, the Shemesh, all of these are inyanim that inspire a person with wonder. So, Memela, the Mekubalim say that Befrat, you have all of the different Peiros v'Yerakas, the different colors, the different textures. It's a way of being nispoil from the greatness of Hashem and the Chastei Hashem. And that brings a person closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that way. Rabbi Victor Miller, Zechrono Livracha, who taught Torah for many years. Rabbi Victor Miller must have given shiurim for 70 years, a tremendous amount of time. And he had many, many things he talked about a lot. Some of them are controversial. I'm not going to go on the controversial things like the Holocaust. But one of the non-controversial things he talks about a lot, was Hakaras HaTayv. He always talked about Hakaras HaTayv. I mean, he would use the Shara Bechina of the Chayvas HaLevavos that talks about looking at the Bria to be Makar Tayv to Hashem. This was a major text that he used over and over again, the Shara Bechina. That's the second gate in the Chayvas HaLevavos. So he has a very famous essay about what you should think about when you eat an apple. I can't do it justice. It's like 20-page thing about an apple. He talks about the color, he talks about the smell, he talks about the balance between acidity and sweetness, the kind of how Hashem balances it exactly right. He has a similar thing for a banana. I think apple and banana are the two fruits that he does this for, because he says that you have to be misbainain. This is the modern term for this is mindfulness. You got to be misbainain in terms of what you're doing, and then the achila itself becomes an avodah, in terms of coming to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? So these were some of the inyanim. Now, there's a final inyan I just want to share with you, and that is that even though Tu B'Shvat is Rosh Hashanah Li'Ilanes, but we find that a person is called an Ilan as well. And this is based on the pasuk in Ki Seitzei, Ki ha'adam eitz hasada. Now, it's important to know, and people don't always realize this. In truth, the Pshutei Shel Mikra is making the opposite point. This is a rhetorical question. Is a tree a man? Because what is the Torah talking about there? The Torah says when you wage war against the enemies that you have to destroy, like the 7 nations of Canaan, lo tashchis, do not destroy the fruit trees. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. Is the tree a human enemy that you should destroy? No, the tree is not a human enemy that you should destroy. So actually, Pumpaker, the pasuk is actually making the point that the tree is not a human. And yet, B'derech Drush, Chazal see it also as a statement. Not a negation, but a statement. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. An Adam is like a tree. Why is an Adam like a tree? So there are a few reasons why an Adam is like a tree. Some say we're an upside down tree. A physical tree has its roots in the Aretz, and it reaches up to Shemayim. We're the other way around. We have our roots in Shemayim, from the Neshima of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we grow into this earth, into this world, which means we're an upside down tree. Maybe that's why we're so mavobel. You're hanging upside down. You know, you're kind of confused. Which way do you go in things? So that's one idea of why we're a tree. Another reason why we're a tree is a tree shows the very deep potential in something. Imagine a tree. A tree could be majestic. You could have a cedar. You could have an oak. You can have a redwood tree that's hundreds of years old. And all of those trees started at some point from a little seed, or a cone, whatever it is. I look at that seed, and that seed, it looks little, insignificant, nothing there. A bird could eat it. But in that seed is Tamun, all of the kaichas that can come out in the majestic redwood tree. This is a human being. We're like a tree. We have to be makir that within us are tremendous kochas. You know, every Gadol Hador who ever lived was a baby, was born a baby. The Vilna Gaon was born a baby, right? In that baby was the Vilna Gaon, right? In that baby was Rebbe Kiva Eger. In that baby was Abaya and Rabbah. In that baby was Moshe Rabbeinu and Avraham Avinu, right? The kochos were there. Elamai, we have to know that we have to actualize those kochos by proper, just like the seed has to be nurtured by water and by avoda, whatever you need to do. So too, we have to be makir, that our kochos have to be nurtured in order to come out. But the kochos are there. In fact, this is even connected to the date of Tu B'Shvat. You know, the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, why is Tu B'Shvat and Rosh Hashanah for trees? Because it's the middle of the winter. I mean, nothing is growing on the trees now. But this is where the sap comes up to the top of the tree, and from that sap will come the peiros. In other words, before Tu B'Shvat, the sap is not fully up there. Now, the sap is a total panemius, meaning I look at the tree from the outside. A tree before Tu B'Shvat looks exactly like a tree after Tu B'Shvat. I don't see budding, I don't see anything there at all. But its panemius, its potential is nishtana. So Tu B'Shvat is about the kayach within a person, or within the tree, and therefore the idea that a person is like a tree, it's also about drawing down our kayachas and potential. So the Chidushei HaRim says a very beautiful thought. There's a Talmud Yerushalmi that says a very fascinating thing. It says any tree that buds before Tu B'Shvat got its nourishment from the Geshem of last year. Any tree that buds after Tu B'Shvat got its nourishment from the Geshem of this year, because most of the rainy season has passed by now. Right? So if it's Nechanat before Tu B'Shvat, its Geshem is Mishana Sha'avra. If it's Nechanat after Tu B'Shvat, its Geshem is from this year. So says the Chidushei HaRim an amazing thing. He says the idea of Geshem does not only mean rain, but Geshem refers to all of the brachos that Hashem gives you. Health, parnasa, shidduch, children, hatzlacha in Torah. These are called gishmei bracha. Now, when does Hashem decide what our Geshem will be? That's decided on Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, finalized on Yom Kippur, Hashem is kaveya, your Geshem. It could change during the year too, but the basic kaviyas is Rosh Hashanah. But says the Chidushei HaRim, until Tu B'Shvat, you're not drawing on the new Geshem that he gave you on Rosh Hashanah. You're still living off the old Geshem, which means, let's say this year is 5784. The Chidushei HaRim understands the Yerushalmi to say that until Tu B'Shvat of 5784, I am drawing on the Shefa Bracha that was given to me in 5783. Only on Tu B'Shvat and afterwards am I now drawing a new source of spiritual kaichais, which was given to me on the Rosh Hashanah of 5784. Now, I hope that'll be better. It might be worse. But the point that he makes is, a sensitive person will be margish, a chiluk in their ruchnius before Tu B'Shvat and after Tu B'Shvat, because the shefa is coming from a different makor. The shefa of pre-Tu B'Shvat of 5784 is coming from 5783. The shefa after Tu B'Shvat, or from Tu B'Shvat afterwards, is coming from 5784. In fact, he's even masber al pi this, a machlekes. There's actually a machlekes in the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. If the Rosh Hashanah li'lanais is echod b'shvat, kedivrei Beit Shammai, or chamisha asar b'shvat, kedivrei Beis Hillel, and of course we paskin like Beis Hillel. But he says, why does Beit Shammai make it the first of Shvat? So the Gemara in Yevamos says that Beit Shammai machadedi tefei, that although the halacha is like Beis Hillel, because of their humility, the intellect of Beit Shammai was greater. They were sharper. They They notice things more, even though the halacha is like Beis Hillel. So the Chiddushei HaRib says that the people of Beit Shammai, because of they were so sharp, they could already sense a new hischadshus 2 weeks earlier. They could sense from Rosh Chodesh Shvat that we're already beginning to get the hashpah of 5784, even though it's very imperceptible, like a little crack in the Eitzer. So he says, Beis Hillel felt we weren't margish until the 15th of Shvat. Beis Shammai's machadadi tfei, so they were margish it from Rosh Chodesh Shvat. So it turns out that this is a wonderful thing, that a new treasury is open, and we can draw from that treasury, but that also depends on our avodah and our cheshek and our desire. So that's the inyan of Rosh Hashanah Lilanais is also a Rosh Hashanah for a person, in the sense that the Geshem was allotted to us on Rosh Hashanah, but now we have the kayach to be meishechet into our lives. Just let me just mention some halachic point, because all of these beautiful thoughts are mainly from the Mekubalim, and yet the phrase Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan is in the Mishnah. So what does the Mishnah mean, right? What does the Mishnah mean by Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan? It doesn't automatically pick up all of these things. So it's really very much Negeya, Trumas Maisris, and Orlas. Let me go over this just very, very quickly. We know that there's the aside by Trumas and Maisris that you cannot give from one year on another year. Meaning if I have 100 bushels from year 1 and 100 bushels from year 2. So let's assume I give Truma, I give 2 bushels per 100. That's the Raisa, Seim Lashir, but, right? So I owe a total of 4 bushels of Truma, right? Because I owe 2 bushels from this 100 and 2 bushels from this 100. But I can't just take 4 bushels from year 1 and let it cover year 2 also, because that's called being mafresh min hayashan ala chadash or min hachadash ala yashan, and therefore everything has to be kept separate in terms of years. Now for grain and for vegetables, the year changes Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah. So therefore I cannot combine Peiros, I cannot combine Tefua and Yerakos from before Tishrei with Tefua and Yerakos after Tishrei. But for an Elon, the year does not change until Tu Bishvat following that year. So therefore, by an Elon, the Peiros that budded, that had Chanata before Tu Bishvat of 5784 can still be combined with 5783. Because it's called 1 year. That's the Rosh Hashanah Lilanis. That the year for a tree changes to Bishvat, it does not change Tishrei. That's one Nakuda. Another Nakuda is Lagabe, the din of Orla. The halacha of Orla that says for 3 years you cannot eat the fruit that grows. So the halacha is, though, that if you planted a tree 45 days before the end of the year, that counts as year 1. Which is the 15th of Av. So therefore I have 45 days of year 1, then I have a second year, and then I have a third year, and then I have to wait that third year, Tu Bishvat, into the 4th year, because the year does not, the Orla period does not end until Tu Bishvat. So according to that, the relevance of Tu Bishvat is for Chadash and Yashan, and it's also for Trumas and Maisris, and it's also relevant for extending the last year of Orla beyond the 3rd Tishrei into the next Tu B'Shvat, right? So halachically, it's a very, very significant day. But as I say, those are the technicalities of halacha. That would not explain the overall ruchnius of the tekuva. Okay, again, I apologize for digressing today, but okay, but davar b'itay matayv. So, Mr. Shavel, next week we'll go back to the Evan Shlema.
Thank you for listening to this Ohr Somayach production. To find out more and to partner in our mission, please visit ohr.edu.